Welcome, folks. We're going to be doing Unit 5 tonight, and we'll start off by reviewing last week's Unit 4, and then we'll go on from there. Uh, you might recall that last week we talked about some of the important financial statements that you'll deal with in your business. We started off with the income statement. Now, what's important to remember about the income statement is that it is only measuring revenue from sales of whatever the product or service is that you're providing, and the expenses related to those sales and any other expenses you have. Okay, so so that's a key statement there, and the bottom line of that is your net profit. That's after you've set aside money after you've paid your expenses and you've set aside money for your taxes. Okay, and then if you're going to distribute any of those profits to whoever the owners are of the company, then whatever, and normally we call that dividends, and then whatever's left over is retained earnings, is going to be money that's going to be kept in the company to grow the company. So, but the main thing you're measuring is how much profit did your sales generate. Then from there, we looked at the cash flow statement. Now, the big difference with the cash flow statement is you may have other money coming into the firm other than just sales. So, for instance, you may have new money coming in from investment. You may have money coming in from loans that you've gotten, so that you have more cash to deal with whatever. And you're measuring all of your disbursements, which includes loan payments and anything else where the money's going out. So that's really functioning very much like your checking account. It's going to measure money coming in from all sources and money going out to all sources. So we looked at the balance sheet, and remember that is really just a snapshot of what is the value of the firm on any given day. And we start off by measuring the assets, which are things that we can either already are cash. So for instance, if you have money in your company checking account, well, that's cash. That's one of your current assets. But it's all other assets of the business, anything that can be converted to cash. So it might be vehicles that the business owns, that if you were to close down that business on a given day, you would sell those vehicles. Okay? So it's anything that the company owns. And then from that, what we're going to take away is anything, what we call liabilities, which is anything that the business owes, any money that needs to be paid out. And that includes your income taxes, that includes any loans that you have to repay, anything like that. So you have a total amount of value that your assets give you, and then you have a total amount of liabilities that you owe to people, and you subtract the liabilities from the cash value of those assets, and whatever's left over is what the company is worth. And we call it net worth. Okay? All right. We also saw that obviously if you're just starting a business, you may not have any experience or historic data to make your financial statements from. In that case, you're going to have to estimate what those statements would be like at a given point in time in the future. And so we call that projecting your financial reports. And there's basically two ways of doing that. Think of one as top down and the other as bottom up. Top down would start off with how much profit do you want the company to make, or do you expect it to make? And then go down to how much costs, or is it going to cost you to generate that amount of profit? And in other words, what costs are you going to incur? And then from that cost, you know what the total sales are that you're going to have to generate in order to create that profit. That's one way of projecting your financials. The other way is to start off guessing or estimating how much sales you will have, And then from that, you know what it's going to cost you to make those sales. And then from that, you can estimate what profit is you're going to generate. Now, the problem with either one of these, if you start off with the profits and work your way down to sales, what happens if you can't generate that number of sales? You're obviously not going to make that much profit. Okay. On the flip side, if you start off measuring your sales, what happens when you do a really good estimate of your sales? What happens when you take away the cost and you figure out what your profit is, and the profit is too small to justify the business? So those are the two extreme situations that you face. Okay. The other thing we talked about was that return on investment, which is what the investor is expecting in order to justify being involved in the business. Now realize, when you start the business, you are an investor. It's your money and your time you're putting into that business. Obviously, you want it to generate enough money that you can make a living off of it. And ideally, that you can grow the business to the point where you can live comfortably. So that's where you're headed for. So when you do your estimates, your financial statement projections, you want to be realistic enough to know whether or not you're going to generate the kind of return that you need to afford to be able to conduct the business. Now, if you're going to need more capital than you can provide personally, then you're going to have to get more capital from somewhere. Okay? And so then you're going to have to go looking at investors, whether it be family or whatever. We need to find some investors. Those investors want to know how much return on investment are they going to get from your business, and they're comparing that with other businesses that they could invest in. So they might invest in your business, they might invest in somebody else's. So therefore, they're looking to see how you compare with the other businesses and how realistic your projections are and what kind of risk is involved that you might not meet those projections. Okay. With that, basically, the other things that an investor is going to be concerned with includes other places they could put their money. So they could put their money in the stock market. There's a certain amount of risk with that, but there's in the long term, there's a certain average return that they're going to get. So they have some measure of that if they can stay in long term. And then obviously a person could put their money in the bank. And so there's certain interest rates you can generate from the bank. So those are options too. Okay. Slides are slow tonight. So the other thing we did is we talked about a business, and we looked at their fixed costs, and we looked at their variable costs. Okay. And we saw how we would expand that business, that growth point, like I was talking about earlier. You grow your business to a certain point, and then that's the maximum you can do out of that facility. So now you need a bigger facility in order to grow your business even further. Bigger storefront or whatever. In the case of a bakery, maybe you need a bigger kitchen in order to do everything. So you got to plan that expansion also. So, unless you're planning on keeping your business small, forever, you need to also figure in what that expansion is going to be. And then we talked a little bit about being conservative in the use of the cash. When the times are good and there's a lot of money rolling in, and your bank account looks really very comfortable, don't rest on your laurels and start taking that money out. You need to be prepared for the bad times, because sales come in cycles. Doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, there is always some cycle to that business. And so there's going to be periods where they're very high income and periods where you may have much lower income. And so you need to be able to average out the cash flow over those situations. Okay, and then the final thing that we got into last week was, where do we get money from? And we started off with the piggy bank, which again is you investing in your own business from your savings and what money you as your family, you and your immediate family can generate. Beyond that, you may want to invite relatives to help you out. They're going to trust you, and in many cases, they're going to be willing to help you out. So you might be going to parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles and trying to get some help there. There's good side and bad side to that. If your projections and your business does not go as well as expected, it may really hurt those people. That investment money they're giving to you may be the only savings they have. And so they may be doing it because you're family, but by the same token, it may hurt them badly, and and because they may not be sophisticated investors, they may not realize the risk. An angel investor, on the other hand, if you can find that special person that's willing to invest in your business, that's good. You may be going to venture capitalists like the sharks in the Shark Tank, and there you're competing with other opportunities that those venture capitalists have. But if they're committed to you, the additional fact is they may provide a lot of expertise to help you in your business. And then there's always the possibility of getting a loan from a bank. Of course, that's going to require collateral. That means you're going to have to put up some assets to cover the bank in case you're not able to make the loan. So basically, there are a number of choices. Each one has its own advantage and its own disadvantages. So obviously, if you have any questions, let me know, and we will deal with them as we can. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and move into Unit 5. Unit 5 really gets to the meat of business. We talked about sales earlier. Well, now we need to get down into what is marketing and what are the fundamentals that we're going to deal with, and then what are some of the specific activities? We call those tactics. And so that's where we're going to start off with. But we kind of need to define what strategy and tactics are. So were you to look at the map on the right, you might recognize that that is the Normandy invasion of World War II. Okay? That represents strategy. That is the big picture of how General Eisenhower and the Allies were going to attack and try to take back Europe, and what was going to be the major step. And so that's the big picture. That's strategy. That are the major steps that you're going to take. On the other hand, we have what we call tactics. Tactics are the specific steps and all the intermediate steps that go with that achieve the goals of that strategic plan. So here we're talking about the individual soldier units, whether it's a platoon or a squad, or, a rifle squad or whatever, and what they are going to do to contribute to winning or performing that strategy or accomplishing that strategic goal. So anyhow, that's an easy way to understand the difference between strategy and tactics. In marketing, strategy is the big picture again. It's how you're going to identify where are those customers most likely to be and what are going to be the motivations that are going to cause them to want to buy from you. That's the big picture. And then the tactics are the individual decisions that you make. How many radio ads are you going to run? Are you going to run any television ads? Are you only going to be on the internet? What's your logo going to look like? How are you going to brand yourself? And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Are you going to have brochures? Exactly what are the steps that you're going to have to go through to make the sales? That is the key bit. So, again, trying to identify who those best customers are, that's obviously our starting point. And there are several things that we need to consider when we're looking at those customers. And there are some things, and it's interesting because oftentimes businesses will want to express in great detail what the features are of their services or their product, okay? And where maybe a better approach is presenting the benefits. So what are the differences between benefits and features? Well, benefits basically get to the crux of the matter of what the customer is going to get when they choose your product. In other words, how's it going to make them feel inside when they choose your product over another? There's something special they're going to get from that. And that's the feeling you're trying to get across in your strategy as you're developing what your marketing strategy is going to be. On the other hand, if you're emphasizing features, then it becomes a laundry list of the things that you think your product is going to provide or your service is going to provide. I'm sure if you shop for computers, you'll see a list of all the characteristics or the specifications of the computer, how fast it is, how many gigabytes of memory it has, all these things, what's the quality of the speakers, you name it, okay? Those are features. The key for most people, though, is what is the benefit. In the case of a computer, how easy is it to use? Is it able to handle the quantity and quality of work that the particular user is interested in? And is it easy in time? Can it be worked with quickly, or does a person require a tremendous amount of training to use it? So those things are more the benefits, what's in it for the customer. And always, no matter what, the customer, no matter what they tell you, they're ultimately in the back of their mind, just as you make decisions every time you choose to buy or not buy something. They are making the same kind of decisions based on what's in it for them. Okay, so you may have heard in past courses or business ideas about the 4 P's of marketing. Okay, and we'll hit on them very quickly here. The first P is, what is the product? So you define the product. What is the price? How competitive is your price? Where is it? Is it easy to get? Is it close by? Can a person walk in and pick it up off the shelf? Or is it something that has to be ordered? So where is it? What place? And then finally, what is the promotion that you use to educate your customers? Okay, so those are the 4 P's, and that was something that business educators preached for a long time. Get your P's down, straight, and make sure that you understand them, and you're clearly, emphasizing what is your product, what is your price, what is the place utility if you had the econ course, and then how are you going to promote it. Another approach to this is what we call the 5 F's. The 5 F's are a little different approach. They focus much more on the customer than on your side. Okay, so when we talk about function, we're going back there to what the customer really wants, and what are they expecting? What are their needs? What do they want? How are they going to benefit from this? The finances, obviously, how much money does it cost? But it's not just the cost. It's how much are they going to, if they pay more now, are they going to save more in the long run? It's kind of like an LED light, okay? You can go out and buy an LED light bulb to replace your regular light bulbs, and they're expensive. You're talking $10 a bulb in some places, maybe more. But they're supposed to last for 20 years, and they use a lot less electricity. So is the savings in the long run, that's part, that has to be reflected in the financial picture of the value of that product to your customer. So what are they going to get out of it financially? Freedom, How convenient is it? Again, that's similar to place in some respects, but it's more from the customer's side. They're going to be able to save time. It's going to be delivered directly to them. You can go through the laundry list, but it's how does it make it much more convenient for them? Okay. And then this one I particularly like. How is the customer, going to feel about your product? And you'll notice that the guy's a little chubby, but how he feels about himself is not nearly as chubby in the mirror. Okay, he sees himself a little differently, and that's the thing we're after. We're not after the need, if you will. We're after the want. We're trying to fulfill a customer's wants and fulfill the image that they expect to achieve by getting our product, okay? Or our service for that matter. And the final one is what is the connection going to be with your customer in the future? So focusing on how you are going to be there to help your customer throughout the life of the product, and hopefully if the product has a limited lifetime, hopefully they're going to come back to you for the replacements. Okay, so it's a much more customer-centered direction in in setting up your marketing strategy than the 4Ps are. The 4Ps tend to be a little bit more from the business side. So that's an important distinction. Okay. Now, one thing to remember in your strategy is that it is much easier to keep a customer than it is to get a new customer. So what are we talking about? Well, we know that there's a lot of additional initial advertising and initial hand-holding and initial working with the customer to get them to commit to buy from you. Okay, so all those involve what we call acquisition costs. So it takes a certain amount of money invested, whether it be time, employees' time or whatever, in order to get a customer to commit to buy from you. Okay, so you go through all that acquisition cost, and it not only is that customer generating money for you today in that sale, but like we talked about a few minutes ago, there's a good possibility that follow-on sales, they'll come back to you for repeat sales. Think of a car, for instance. If a person buys a car from a particular dealership, and that dealership can also provide the service on that car at a competitive price, then the owner of that car is much more likely to go back to the dealer to have the dealer work on the car because they know that kind of car really well, and especially if their prices are competitive. And every time they come back to that dealership for service, there's another strengthening of that bond between the dealership and the owner of the car, so that when it comes time to replace the car, they're probably going to go to that dealership again and at least give them a shot at the business. So there's a lifetime value to each customer. But it's not just the sales the customer makes, but it's all the people that customer talks to who feels very favorable towards your business, and they tell their friends. That word of mouth, okay? That is a stronger recommendation than anything that can happen. It's just like I'm sure you've each experienced where somebody has told you that they've had a really good experience with a particular store and they had just what that person wanted, and they know you need to go get that thing, and so you try them out, and bingo, away you go. Okay. So the flip side of that whole effort, though, is how easy it is to lose a customer. And you'll notice the picture on the right, and what it says. The person nicely wrote their message in ketchup. How would you like to be the owner of that restaurant and have had your staff working in that restaurant that day and you were out, and you come back and you walk through the past the counter and you see that message. That message is going to be devastating to you, because you know there's nothing you can say to get that customer back. Once that customer's walked out the door, they're gone, and they're never going to come back to you. And everyone they know is going to hear about that. That's going to be the first thing on their mind when they start talking to, someone says, oh, let's go out to eat. Or they say, well, whatever you do, don't go to the XYZ restaurant. Look what happened to me. And the word's going to spread. So it's going to cost you much, much more in terms of customer acquisition costs to make up for the losses than it would have cost in a little extra service. Now, again, that may be very extreme, but suffice to say, every business faces that. Okay. Now, we mentioned brand identity, or how much importance branding is. And I'm sure if you were to look at this slide, that each one of these, or many of these logos, are going to pop to your mind immediately. Okay? You're going to see those logos, and you're going to know exactly what those logos meant. So what we see is each one of these logos immediately brings a picture to your mind of what that company represents. What is going to be the thing you're going to get out of that company? What is it just defines them. And so what you want to do is establish that same situation where you have a logo and you've branded yourself, not just creating the logo, but everything that goes with it, so that when a customer sees your logo, your sign, whatever it is, they immediately know what a high quality business this is, okay, and how it's going to provide them with exactly what they want. Okay, so what does a brand do? Well, it shows what your promise is. It shows what your values are. And it creates that message that you're trying to get across. Okay? Now, what is the identity of your company? Well, you want every place that your company is indicating its identity, whether it be on your brochures, whether it be on the logo on the shirt of your employees, if your employees are wearing a uniform kind of shirt, whether it's in the packaging for your materials, whatever it is, you want it to be consistent with the image you're trying to create. You want it to be reflective of the value that you're going to provide to your customer. Not just the benefit, not just the features, but the benefit that your customer is going to get out of it, what's in it for them. And then you want to make sure that this image you've created is protected, copyrighted, so that nobody can come along and steal it and in effect get the benefit, if you will, of all your hard work. So, some things you need to consider when you're creating that identity. You need to make sure that every piece of advertisement or whatever that goes out has the correct information on it. That it creates that right feeling, that warm and fuzzy feeling. And you would like your logo and everything else to be not easily outdated. Okay? Now, think for a few minutes, and some of you may remember this. There was a movie group in California that put out movies called 20th Century Fox. Well, yes, they put out movies for a long time, and that logo was so futuristic in 1950, 1940, 1950, even in 1960. But by the time you get to 2010, 2014, it's not so futuristic anymore. As a matter of fact, it's antique. Okay? We're talking about the previous century. So, here's something that was easily outdated. Okay? The other thing is you want the name of your company and everything that goes with it to be easy to spell. Easy to say and easy to spell. You don't want to use a complicated name like DiGiamarino and Associates, okay? Because there ain't nobody going to be able to say that, and they're definitely not going to spell it right, okay? So you want to come up with something that's a little catchier than that, but does accomplish what you're after, okay? So instead of having an insurance agency, named ELD Associates or E.D. Jamarino Associates, maybe you call it Quality Lifestyles Planning Group. Ooh, something totally different. Huh. So, and then the other thing is you want it easy enough to be remembered. Okay, you don't want it to be very bland and have it disappear. Okay, you need the person to remember it. So if you can accomplish all that in the name of your company and the logo that you're creating, it's going to be much easier. Okay, the logo. That logo is to create an image. And again, in your reading, you'll find an interesting comment by Abrams where she is crossing a bridge and she sees a sign, billboard, and all it has is the logo on it. And she goes into great detail about all the images that logo brought forth in her mind. That's what you want your logo to do. You want it people to immediately know and have images that come to mind that are very positive. Okay, now many businesses will have some kind of a tagline or motto or something like that. Okay, again, you want your tagline that goes with that so that when the person sees the logo, they almost immediately remember the tagline. Now, let me ask this. Well, let me come back to that in a minute. How many people remember LSMFT and what that means? And I'll give you just half a second to think. And unless you're somewhere near my age bracket, you're probably not going to remember it. But what it comes from is an advertisement back in the 50s and into the 60s for that matter, for a brand of cigarettes called Lucky Strike. And they had a big red logo, but it stands for Lucky Strike means fine tobacco, LSMFT. And here it is, we're talking 50 years later, more than that, and that sticks in my mind. And the only place I saw it was on television as a child, as a young teenager, as a child, and then as a teenager. Okay, and then they quit. Cigarettes were no longer legal. Not legal, I shouldn't say, but advertising cigarettes on television went away, and so did all those ads. But here's, what about the Camel cigarettes? You'd walk a mile for a Camel. And all these other logos. Well, those things stick in your mind. That's what you want your tagline to do. You want your tagline to be locked in that person's memory. So, years later, they're going to remember it. Now, it's going to take an awful lot to get to that, but you get the idea that some marketing and advertising is more effective than others. Of course, it wasn't too effective because I couldn't stand those when I did smoke. I could never stand those kind of cigarettes, but that's beside the point. The commercial stuck in my mind. Or another one, again, we're talking about very old advertisements, but think of if you're old enough to remember Dinah Shore. And she had television show in the 50s and about put on by Chevrolet. And her tagline was, "See the USA in your Chevrolet." And then it went on from there. So that's what taglines are all about. Okay, and then colors. You're going to want to be consistent in what colors you use along with your logo. Okay, and you want to use that same image or that same set of colors in your packaging. You want to use it in your uniforms. You want to use it wherever, in your storefront and inside the store and in your website. Okay. So, for instance, if your logo and everything is in a purple color, you don't want to suddenly have green or yellow as your main color theme on your website or something. You want things to be consistent. Okay? And again, there's a lot of psychology in how you pick what color and what colors are going to elicit, what feelings they're going to elicit in uh, your potential customers. So, exactly. You want the colors to generate a feeling, that feeling of comfort with your business. Okay. So, you're going to be developing a core message, and but remember, as you're developing that message, what's really, really important is what your customers remember, not just what you say. So you may give an awful lot of information about what you do, what makes you different, why you are better than your competitors, what have you. Okay? But the key is that your customers are going to remember what's in it for me. Okay? That's the part they remember. What's in it for me. Okay? So as you're constructing that core message that you're trying to get across, you have to construct it in a way that lets your customers embrace, if you will, what's in it for me and remember that. Okay. Oh, money, 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 money. Obviously, marketing costs money. How do we figure out how much money to spend on our marketing? Okay. Well, first thing we can do is figure out what advertisement we need. And again, it says advertising. There's several different forms of advertising. Remember, that's our tactics. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But we can start off with what advertising we need to do. And remember, it's not what you can afford to do. It's what you need to do. And then how much money is it going to take to get to that? Okay. The flip side is taking a certain percent of your sales, of your revenue that's coming in, and saying, I'm going to devote this amount of my revenue to advertising. And you can find out what the industry average is for your particular business or the industry that you're in. And you might find that some businesses or some industries will devote 2% of their sales revenue to advertising. Other businesses may devote 7% of their sales revenue to advertising. So it's going to be, it's the money's got to come from somewhere. And remember, you've got all these other expenses of generating your sales, but you have to include the advertising too. So either way is you can go at it figuring out how much money you're going to spend on advertising in either direction. But again, I kind of like starting at the bottom and working my way up. If I can figure out what do I need and be reasonably correct and really good at estimating that from doing the right research and studies, then I can figure out how much money I'm going to need, and then I can figure out where I'm going to get the money from. So that's the key. Okay, so what are some things that we deal with? Well, obviously the price of our product. Now, we can be the lowest price around, and I'm sure you've seen many businesses that guarantee the lowest price. But who is the customer that they're going to attract? Okay. Well, invariably, they're going to attract the customer who is most concerned about price. And the problem with that, it can be a good thing, you'll get some customers, but the bad thing is that if a competitor offers a lower price, then that customer is going to jump ship and go to that competitor because the only thing they're concerned with is that price. Now, on the flip side of that, you could have a business where price is not the concern that you have. What you're trying to express is what is the value that you're offering. Now, you could be excessive and charge a really high price, but if the customer does not feel that they're getting the value that justifies the price they're paying, they're not going to pay the price. So the key is how much value can you provide to that customer in determining what it is they want. Okay? What's in it for them? If you don't take anything else away from this seminar, take away that phrase that the customer wants to know what's in it for them. Okay. Now, So we've talked a lot about different strategy in the big picture. Now we need to get down to the tactics. We need to figure out how much radio, what's the value of radio, what's the value of TV, those kinds of things. So there's lots of ways to advertise. You can do the billboards. The billboards catch a certain group of people as they drive by. You can do newspapers. Newspapers are interesting from the standpoint that still in this day and age of more computerized, there are still some people who get their news through newspapers, and there's advertising in there. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. And the thing about the paper is the people will be reading another article and they'll see your ad right next to the article. So there is some advantage to that. And of course, the billboard, pretty straightforward. You're only going to get the people driving by. Now, one of the flaws of billboards, and I'm sure many of you would recognize this problem. How many times have you driven down an interstate highway and you've had a beautiful billboard, but it's got so many words on it you can't read it, and you don't walk away with how to contact it? You've gone by it so quickly that you don't know who to contact or who the company was or anything. It was just too much information. Okay, so you need to make, if you're going to do a billboard, you need to make it very concise, and it needs to get the message across without a lot of words. Okay. What about radio advertising? Radio advertising, especially because most people are using a radio in their car, is a very effective means of advertising for capturing that group of demographic that people are going to be in their cars a certain amount. Most people driving, listening on their car are not going to change the radio station when an ad comes on. They're just going to listen to it, and they're going to keep on going. Okay, they're going to stay with that channel because there's something with that radio channel that they like, whether it's the quality of music or whatever. Okay, so you'll get the demographic from that radio station. Now, obviously you can advertise on more than one radio station, but realize that each kind of music or kind of format for a radio station is going to have its own demographic listening audience. And so you need to focus on the station that has the demographic that you're most interested in. Okay, television advertising. Now that's a little different. How many times have you, sitting in your living room watching television, and the commercial comes on, and that's the signal to get up and go to the bathroom, or to get up and go out in the kitchen and get a snack, or to go check on the kids, or whatever. Okay? So oftentimes the majority of people do not sit and pay attention to the commercial on television. They do something else. And with some of the modern systems, you're able to blink out the commercials, record the show, and blink out the commercial. And so, you hear a business pays for their commercial, but nobody's seeing it because they're, time shifting their watching of the show. So they're recording the show and watching it at a different time. So again, there's some advantage to television because you do get a very large audience. But the flip side of that is you do have the would you say, loss of viewers' eyeballs during that time. Okay, what about magazines? Magazines are an interesting way to advertise, mainly because most magazines have a shelf life. So somebody buys a magazine or they subscribe to a magazine, it comes into the house, they thumb through it, maybe they read an article, they put it on the coffee table. Maybe they come back a little later, they look at another article. Okay, but it's laying there, and then maybe the spouse, the husband or wife, comes in, they pick up the magazine, they thumb through it. Or maybe the wife says, gee, you need to look at this article. And the husband picks up the article and looks at it, and sure enough, there's your ad on the other side. So magazines have a shelf life that is longer than newspapers, definitely longer than television, and longer than radio. Okay, so you have to consider the shelf life too, providing that the demographic who would read the magazine are the ones that you're looking for to buy your product. Okay, of course, the internet is an important aspect of every business. Every business needs to have a website. That's one of the first things that people ask. It's just like this afternoon, my wife and I were in a store, and the lady in front of us had an interesting T-shirt on that had some words on the back, and it kind of caught our eye. It was about a group of ecology tours in the area that we just moved to. Estuary tours, they called it. And so we asked her, he says, is this just a shirt you're wearing, or are you involved with this organization? And we actually took the time to find out that she was an employee of the organization. She sat there and talked to us for several minutes in the store, telling us about her organization and what they did. And the main thing is, before we left, is, by the way, is this your website? And it was on the shirt, obviously. So we found out what the website is. Now we can go check it out and get into the details as we see fit. So every business, doesn't matter what it is, needs to have access to a website. Remember though, how you structure that website is part of your branding image. And so it has to be consistent with everything else. It also has to be kept up to date. It has to be changed periodically, because there's nothing more boring than going to the same company's website, month after month after month after month, and it always looks the same. Now, that's fine if you're just going to get a bit of information, but if you have occasion to go back to that website periodically, you need to update it. You need to make sure that whatever information presented on there is current. Okay. So, obviously, if you have any questions, make sure you let me know. I'm more than happy to discuss them with you. And what do we have to do this week? Well, you've got 2 chapters, 9 and 10, which are going to deal with the marketing. And then we have our normal activities. I hope you are continuing to work on your final project. Be aware that come Unit 8, 9, and 10, there's a bunch of work due then. So, and here we are approaching the halfway mark, so be aware of that. So, what's our discussion going to deal with tonight? Well, it's going to deal, or this week, is going to deal with online computer sales. And so you'll have an interesting discussion on that topic. And I think most all of us have used computers at one time or another. So you get to choose 3 websites, and you get to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each. Okay. Your assignment for this week deals with Dove's Real Beauty campaign and about the marketing fundamentals that they used and how the company is going to retain customers and etc., as you can see there. Go ahead and finish very quickly then. So you see what the questions are for your Unit 5 assignment, and that difference in the way that Dove approached their advertising, and that was a major change. That was a big to-do when they decided to go to average people instead of the models. Okay, and then working on your final project, again, we have some things that we want you to look at in this week, working toward that final project. Again, looking at what your options are, what kind of research into entrepreneurial opportunities you feel are appropriate for you. You get shot to discuss what company name you want to use. Has anything here caused you to change your idea of what that name or tagline would be? And then discussing more of your vision. Again, this is nothing you're going to turn in tonight. This is this week. This is helping you put together your thinking for that final project. And then you know how to contact me. You know where I'm at. You know how to get a hold of me. Feel free to do so. And with that, I want to thank you all very much for coming tonight. And we will see you in the discussion threads.